Jimmy Pacquiao stepped quietly into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, holding the small slip of paper that had brought him there, a minor traffic violation he hoped would be resolved quickly. His posture was respectful, his expression calm but clearly nervous. At this point, no one in the room had the slightest idea who he truly was. He looked like any other young man appearing for a routine hearing. Judge Caprio glanced at the list of names before calling him forward. "Good morning, sir." "Please step up," the judge said warmly, offering the same kindness he extended to every person who entered his courtroom. Jimmy approached, keeping his voice soft, almost hesitant, when he replied, "Good morning, Your Honor." The judge smiled reassuringly, sensing the young man's nervousness. "Don't worry," he said gently. "We're just here to talk about the situation." Jimmy nodded, standing respectfully with his hands folded. The courtroom remained unaware, for now, of the identity of the polite young man standing before one of America's most beloved judges. Audience Hook, but when Judge Caprio learned who was standing before him, the entire courtroom went silent. Judge Caprio began reviewing the ticket. "So, Jimmy, can you tell me what happened on the day of the incident?" Jimmy lifted his head slightly and explained with calm sincerity. He spoke clearly and humbly, describing the misunderstanding that led to the violation. There was no defensiveness in his tone, only honesty and respect. Judge Caprio listened carefully, nodding from time to time. He noticed the young man's gentle manner, his patience, and the way he chose his words thoughtfully. It wasn't typical for someone so young to speak with such maturity. "Where are you from, Jimmy?" the judge asked, curiosity forming naturally. "I'm from the Philippines, Your Honor," he replied politely. "You're very well spoken," the judge said with genuine appreciation. "What do you do here in the U.S.? Jimmy answered with humility, explaining his studies, his training, and his goals. Nothing about his tone hinted at entitlement or fame. The judge could sense there was more beneath the surface, something unspoken. Engagement break. Have you ever met someone who impressed you with just their humility? Comment yes if you believe respect always wins. Judge Caprio leaned back slightly, intrigued by the young man's composed nature. "Tell me a little more about your upbringing," he said. "Your values, your family." Jimmy hesitated for a moment, not wanting to draw attention to himself. But he also knew the judge was asking out of genuine interest. "I grew up in a family that taught me discipline, respect, and kindness," he began softly. "My parents always told me that success means nothing if you forget where you came from." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Those sound like powerful lessons. What did your father do?" Jimmy smiled modestly. "My father, he's Manny Pacquiao." A few people in the courtroom exchanged surprised glances, but Jimmy continued speaking calmly. He explained how, despite growing up as the son of one of the world's most famous boxers, his parents always emphasized humility. He spoke of early mornings, constant training, strict discipline, and the importance of treating everyone with respect, no matter who they were. He didn't boast. He didn't lean on his father's legendary achievements. Instead, he focused on the principles his family lived by. The courtroom quickly sensed that Jimmy was not a young man trying to ride on his father's fame. He was someone trying to build his own character, his own path. Judge Caprio nodded, seeing sincerity in his eyes. There was something refreshing about a person who could come from such a famous family, yet remain grounded and gentle. Slowly, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. People listened more closely, connecting with his words and his authenticity. The courtroom wasn't just hearing about Manny Pacquiao's son, they were learning who Jimmy truly was. Judge Caprio leaned forward, curiosity now turning into realization. "Wait a minute," he said with a soft laugh. "Manny Pacquiao? The world champion? The senator?" That Manny Pacquiao? Jimiel nodded with a shy smile. Yes, Your Honor. The room vibrated with whispers. That's Manny Pacquiao's son? No way. I didn't recognize him. But Jimiel stayed humble, lowering his gaze slightly. He wasn't proud because of the fame in his bloodline. He was proud of the values he had carried into the courtroom. Judge Caprio chuckled lightly. You know, he said, I've watched your father for many years. A remarkable fighter, but an even more remarkable human being. Jimiel thanked him quietly, still avoiding attention. His gentle demeanor made the moment oddly comforting rather than dramatic. Instead of boasting, he simply acknowledged who he was and who he hoped to become. Judge Caprio took a breath, suddenly thoughtful. He leaned back in his chair, memories passing through his eyes. Your father's story, he said gently, is one of the greatest stories of perseverance I've ever known. He spoke about Manny's childhood, growing up in poverty, fighting with heart and purpose, rising to become one of the most respected athletes in the world. But he didn't turn the moment into a lecture. Instead, he used it to praise the young man standing before him. You know, Jimiel, the judge continued, your father earned fame through his fists, but I believe he earned respect through his humility. And I see that same humility in you today. Jimiel swallowed gently, touched by the judge's words. Then Judge Caprio shared a personal story, one about his own father, a hard-working immigrant who taught him that character is worth more than success. His voice softened, and the courtroom grew quiet. It was an emotional passing of wisdom from one generation to the next. People in the audience wiped their eyes. Some felt inspired. Others felt grateful. Everyone felt the sincerity in the judge's message. Finally, Judge Caprio returned to the actual case. He reviewed the details once more, then looked up with a kind expression. Jimiel, considering the circumstances and your honesty today, I'm going to dismiss this case, he said warmly. But more importantly, I want you to remember this. The world sees your last name, but character is what defines you. And today, you've shown tremendous character. Jimiel bowed his head respectfully. Thank you, Your Honor. I truly appreciate your kindness. The judge smiled. Keep walking the path you're on. Your father would be very proud. Jimiel thanked him again, grateful not just for the dismissal but for the wisdom he received. A few days later, the courtroom clip was posted online. At first, it seemed like just another moment from Judge Caprio's courtroom, but the story took off. Millions watched in awe as Jimiel Pacquiao stood humbly before Judge Frank Caprio. People weren't amazed because he was Manny Pacquiao's son. They were amazed because of the grace, discipline, and respect he showed. Comments flooded in. He earned respect on his own. This is the definition of humility. Judge Caprio always brings out the best in people. The video spread across social media, celebrated not as a celebrity moment but as an inspiring lesson in character. 2 generations, a young man, still defining his future, and a wise judge sharing decades of experience, created a moment the world didn't expect but deeply appreciated. Final call to action. If you believe true greatness comes from humility, type humble in the comments and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this.